Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. It's me, Robyn. I hope you're all having a dope week. I'm back at it again with the animation reviews. So today's portfolio that I'm going to be giving feedback on is Gerchek Taskala, who is a contender. Now, he's got a very nice show reel. It's his reel this time. It's not just different clips. It's a whole reel that we're going to go through. So let me just get that up on screen for you guys. And there we go. I hope that that is showing for everyone. Okay, so I'm just going to go into it and play it through once for you guys, like I always do, just so you can see it all. Wait a minute, is it not showing? Hang on. That's weird. It wouldn't be one of my streams if something didn't go wrong, right? Awesome, Clark. I'm looking forward to your admission. I'm looking forward to reviewing your stuff. Okay. I hope you guys can see this now. I'm just waiting while Twitch catches up with me. Oh, there, yes. Okay, awesome. You can see what I'm seeing right now. Okay, let me start again and play this for you. Cool, so let's go right back to the beginning. So I like that part there where he's like shaking it out like you always see athletes doing. That's a cool way of, sort of humanizing the character, making them seem less like an animated puppet and more like an actual person. So that's a nice touch. He could have a little more flexibility in his ankles there while he's shaking his feet out, a bit of overlapping action there. And then as he also goes onto each leg, a little bit more attention paid to the weight transfer there and where the weight is going to be, what leg it's on, especially on this leg here. It sort of feels like his weight's not quite on that leg if you look at his plumb line over here. Oh gosh, I'm having such technical difficulties today. And this is now red, so you can't even see it properly. Let me do yellow. Okay, so if you look at his plumb line, I don't know what's wrong with my tablet, but you get the drift of what I'm saying. His weight is not, actually on his foot that's on the ground there. So I would just pay attention to, weight distribution and stuff like that. And then over here in this pose, he could have a little more anticipation, have him sort of lean back on that back leg a little more there. So in this whole space here, this space of time, have him lean back onto his back leg, get down a little lower to the ground as he's gathering like his power and his energy to then shoot off. Because when a runner takes off, they're pushing off from their back leg mostly. So he needs to get his weight back onto that back leg and get down closer to the ground as he's preparing, get his body a little more forward as he prepares to run over there. We could also have a little bit more animation done to the neck and the head, as he bends forward and gets ready, also a little bit of overlapping action there on the neck and the head as one of the extremities. Oh, I just noticed as well there, that hand over there is going through his leg. Why is this pen so fat? That's better. Watch that hand as he goes. It goes right through his leg there. So just be careful of stuff like that happening as well. And then he sort of shoots off. And the spacing here of your keyframes, working in 3D, you don't actually have to pay as much attention to spacing because, there's curves and all that stuff. So you're not actually working according to how many keyframes you're sitting there drawing to work on your spacing and get your timing, looking right. But that's why a lot of the time we can neglect to think about stuff like that. But spacing is still a thing, even with 3D animation. So he kind of just shoots off and it's a very linear, evenly spaced movement while he's running. But actually he would start and go off and gather momentum as he runs. Over here for the jump, he could do with a little more anticipation as well. Get a little lower to the ground as he prepares himself to jump. And also the head here, the neck and stuff is feeling still quite stiff. So the spacing here also in the jump, he should be a little faster as he goes off. There's a little bit of over here as he slows down in the arc, but he could definitely speed up as he comes down again, as his body weight and gravity sort of pushes him back toward the ground. The landing is very nice and that roll is nice and smooth. There's a hand that sort of grabs your attention there. But I can't seem to get it right on that keyframe. Let's see. That hand over there at the back kind of grabs your attention a little. I think because it's such a quick, it's just there for one frame and it's so bright there behind his head that it kind of just draws your eye. So just be careful of little things like that. It's the same as with like paying attention to silhouette and stuff like that. It's just these little things that can grab your attention and just make something like look just a little off. I would work on the spacing here again. As he comes up, he sort of just comes right onto his knee and then straight up. But he should actually come onto his knee stay on that knee for just a few keyframes as he sort of like gathers himself. I know he's coming forward with the momentum, but there would be a bit of a jolt, you know, as his knee hits the ground. He would stay on the ground for a few keyframes as he comes forward and then stands up. And then again, just watch the weight distribution here. As he comes up, there would be a bit of an overshoot and all the weight would go onto that leg that's on the ground currently. And then it would go onto the other leg, which we're not getting over here at the moment. It's sort of a very mechanical stand up. He's on that leg, the other leg goes down, that's it. There's no sort of like overshoot or weight redistribution over here as he lands. So throughout, I would just watch, you know, the head animation, that overlapping action over there, bit of follow through on the wrists, slight bit more flexibility there, and then things like spacing and weight distribution. So this is a pretty good walk cycle. It's smooth. It doesn't have any of that popping that often happens on like overextension of legs, especially on the contact position and stuff. But I think it's gone sort of maybe a little bit in the other direction where to avoid that overextension, especially in the contact position here, I think the legs are just a little too bent. So as he walks, he's kind of just floating along with quite bent knees when his legs should be a little straighter in the contact position. The feet are nice, the foot roll that you've got going on there, that looks really good. He also looks like he's got a little bit of a limp. It looks like maybe the left leg is coming forward a little faster than the right leg. And his hips are rotating forward a little, which gives it, I don't know how to describe it. It just looks a little less organic, you know, a little less human and more like sort of a robot that's just sort of powering forward, you know. I don't know if that makes sense. But I think the hips are just rotating forward a little too much there. The head is also just looking a little stiff as well. There could be a little bit of rotation, you know, backwards and forwards. But I think mostly the main thing is that the timing of the left leg is a little different than the timing of the right leg. And I think the knees are just a little bit too bent throughout. Okay, this guy looks a little stiff as well. It's the same thing, you know, have a bit of overlapping action on the wrists. I know that there is some, you can see it as it comes forward there, but it sort of stops here. You see there, that's a very stiff wrist, that wrist there. Very stiff wrist there, and then it comes and he starts to raise it to wave. But just, you know, as a rule of thumb, especially with things like wrists, it needs some overlapping action. It's almost as if it's got some follow through on it. So if you ever have your arm sort of rotating forward or moving or anything, the wrist is always going to follow a few frames behind. So if I'm bringing my arm forward like this, the wrist is bent back a little, and then as it goes back that way, then it will follow through afterwards a few frames later, which I think is lacking a little bit here, which makes him look quite stiff. Also, his head is quite stiff as well still. And I think another problem with contributing to the stiffness of the character is that I see that his shoulders, you know, are rotating back and forth with his arms, but they're not rotating up and down. So usually shoulders and hips as well, they would be counter to each other, but they rotate in a sort of a figure of 8 as you walk. So it's sort of up and down and back and forth at the same time. Don't forget that you're animating in 3 dimensions. It's not just 2. So it's not just back and forth, it's up and down and pretty much, all the way 360. So just remember that when you're animating things like shoulders and hips, they don't just go backwards and forwards. They would go up and down as well. Do them in a figure of 8. So not extreme as that, obviously, but just, as a sort of a guidance, that's how they would be moving. Okay, when he waves, he could definitely have some finger animation. He doesn't seem to have anything going on with his fingers at the moment. So you would have them, they'd be a little bit curled as he's walking, and then as he lifts his hand to wave, they would splay out, and they wouldn't all go at the same time. They would sort of be offset from each other for that little wave. He could also have a, follow through on his wrist there as he raises it. And then as he brings it down again, follow through. And also arcs. I think it's also just missing some arcs over there. I mean, that does have an arc, but as he then brings it down there, I would have, it's up and then it comes back in an arc up to his ear. And then as it comes down here again, it would come down in an, oh, that's a bit off, but come down in an arc as well. And then as he turns the corner, he's not just going to, no, I mean, I don't think he is like sonar or anything. So he would turn his head to look first before he turns the corner. So he anticipates that there's a corner there. He knows there's a corner there, but he has to first see where the corner is before he can turn around it. So he would turn his head to look at the corner, and then his body would follow. He wouldn't turn first and then turn his head, and his head is quite stiff there with that turn. And again, this wrist here is very stiff as well. Okay, so her body is quite stiff and sort of tilted forward and kind of, it's a very stiff posture. And she wouldn't usually be, tilting forward like this, when walking. Usually you'd be tilted a little bit more backwards while walking. Again, follow through on wrists and stuff like that. These are very stiff, her wrists over here. There's none of that happening. And again, I think there's the issue of her legs are just a little too bent throughout the walk cycle. So there's a little bit of a thing happening on her hand, on this hand, as she walks forward in the next few frames. It looks like a bit of a glitch or a pop or something. I think the problem there is that there's just too many keyframes too close together. So it ends up not looking like a natural movement, and then it does a bit of a pop and, it kind of draws your attention to that hand. So be wary of over animating, like over keyframing stuff. The curves are very helpful. The graph editor is definitely your friend. So I'd have a little more anticipation here in her body. She sort of just stops. And there's like a little bit of a wobble there, but it doesn't really look like any sort of intentional anticipation, like she's actually thinking of anything. Nice that she adjusts her stance there, that's good. So as she goes down here, she would usually do a few like preparatory balls just to test. So she's going down, she's got her elbows bent. And there is actually the opportunity for her to sort of like pull up slightly, just so she can like sort of test her stance before she goes right into picking the thing up. And again, there's like a lot of opportunity for her to like adjust her footing and stuff and just really prepare to pick up this heavy weight. As she picks it up, there should be a bit more straining here, a bit more impact. So she would go and she would pull up. You see how her arms actually straighten after this has already gone off the ground. So the weights start lifting off the ground before her arms are even, extended fully. So she would pull up and her arms would straighten first. There'd be a moment or two, a few keyframes, as she pulls on the weight, and then the weight would come up. And then the spacing over here is just also, I would just work on that a little bit more. So she'd pull up the weight quite fast to here, stop as it reaches her hips, and she wouldn't have, her feet are coming off the ground here. So I would just watch that. Straighten here while she keeps it on her hips, readjusts her grip. And then she would sort of, so she'd readjust her grip, like maybe change her stance a little bit to now push the thing up, and then she would push it up. At the moment, it's all just like one sort of movement without any changing in spacing or timing here. Over here, it looks like the rig is breaking a little, so I would just watch that as well. It could possibly be that the arms are not rotated properly, on the right axis, so then it ends up making the arms look twisted. And then over here, as this lifts, there should just be a little bit more physical reaction, because if you think about it, she's pushing this really heavy weight above her head. And if that suddenly gets taken away from her without her expecting anything, she's going to overbalance or something, because everything in her body is now pushing up on this weight. So I would just add a little bit more physical reaction over there and just hold that stance a little longer than just, it looks like a very gentle sort of movement there. And with the sort of weight that she's pushing up, it wouldn't be a gentle reaction once that weight is taken away. Okay, so I see that the camera's got a bit of a handheld vibe here, but I would definitely, because this guy's obviously a big boy. So when he hits the ground, I would definitely give like quite a hectic camera shake here, and also possibly have the cars lift off the ground, have the environment react to this very giant gorilla landing there. Camera shake definitely would give it a lot more impact. And as he lands, have his feet hit the ground first and then his body come forward. So have him actually be straight up a little longer, not sort of have him landing like this. So have his body straight as his feet land, have the feet land, and then the body sort of comes forward. And offset the arms as they land. At the moment, they're behind the car, so you can't really see, but they kind of come down at the same time. So definitely offset that. Offset the shoulders, tilt the shoulders a little more to add a little more interest to the shot. So I would have him land, have his shoulders be, like this, tilted. First, this arm comes down and hits the ground, and then the next one, also watch silhouette. You should probably have a little bit of negative space here, so the arm could be out a little more. And again here, I mean, if you're just looking at the silhouette, it might get a little like not communicating properly what you're seeing here. So again, I would just have this arm out a little bit more, have a bit of negative space there, and just watch this hand here, because I see obviously it's the same sort of thing here as gorillas do. They walk on their knuckles and they often have their hands like that in fists, but it's just the angle that it's at. It ends up looking like a bit of a strange paw. So I would tilt it so that's a little bit more toward the camera so that you can see like a little bit more of the rest of the fingers, just so that that's not getting lost in translation over there. As he lands, I would also have some overlapping action on the head, because it's quite a like a big movement that he's having. It's quite a violent movement as he lands, so there would be that follow through on the extremities. And also as he stands up over here, have his body stand up and then his head follow and lift. Okay, so I would hold this a little longer just so he can come up a little more. So just a few frames longer on that angle of the shot. And then as he hits the ground, I would have a bit more follow through action on these feet over here. So like a reaction to that hitting the ground. So he would hit the ground and then his feet would kind of come down and hit the ground, or like bob down at least as he hits the ground there. And then this movement here is just, it's a little too smooth. He would lift I know it's not a person, but even so, the way, you know, actions work and movement, you need, you know, momentum and stuff to make an action happen. So he would also need like a weight to balance and counterbalance. So he would use the momentum of lifting his head first. He would lift his head and then the rest of his body, and then he would come up and then land on his feet. But this whole movement here is just a little too smooth and everything's sort of happening at once. It kind of looks like it's on an ice rink or something when he lands. Like there's a lot of skid there. I would definitely offset the legs landing like that. And I would just have a lot less skid. I understand if it's like a really heavy thing, it would skid a little on the ground, especially if he's metal, if he doesn't have a lot of grip on his feet. But it's just a little too extreme there. And then there, as he's kind of stopped, and then this other foot is still moving and coming in. So just watch that, because it looks like this. It's just like a bit of drift on the foot. I would add some pauses, just even throughout, just pauses and more anticipation and stuff like that, just to give your shots a little more impact, give each major action a bit more breathing room, and not have everything happen just continuously, smoothly, one after the other. On the whole, it's a really great showreel. Thanks for sending it in. Oh, I see you commented. Sorry, I don't check the comments while I'm going through the reel, but thank you. I'm glad you agree, and I hope that it's, you know, valuable feedback and that it helps you going forward. It is a very good showreel, so well done. And thank you for submitting it. So thank you for watching, everyone. I hope that this was helpful and it helps you in your own work. And that you can just keep these tips and this feedback in mind as you're working through your own stuff, especially when you're working on showreels and stuff like that. If it's something you're going to be submitting to companies, then it's just, you know, it's the little things. Yeah, you see, after a year, once you've gone away from it and then you come back, that always happens with anything, like anything creative you're doing, especially animation. you're working on it and you get so involved in the details and what you're working on that there's all these little things that you actually don't even notice. And then you come back to it like a month later, a year later, and you suddenly see all these glaringly obvious things. So it happens to all of us. It's a very common thing. But thanks for watching to all the 6 watchers. Thank you, Gerchik. I hope I pronounced your name properly. Thank you for submitting your reel. It's a really great reel. And I'll see all you guys next week again for the next feedback session. Yes, no, it is okay. It's a very good reel, especially for a rookie. It's very good. So well done. I mean, mine wasn't this good when I left varsity. So it really is a good reel. So thank you for your submissions and have a great week, everybody.